We've got something fun today, Barry, and I think our listeners will love this one. You know how we enjoy digging into fascinating vintage things here on the Classic Connection? Well, today we're going to dive into something that literally makes music come alive.
Oh, we're talking records and gramophones, aren't we? This is great. I've been collecting and restoring these beautiful pieces of musical history for longer than I probably should admit.
That's exactly right. And I know you've got this incredible knowledge about everything from those old Shellac 78s to modern vinyl, the whole evolution of how we listen to music.
The history is just fascinating, and you know what really interests me the most? It's not just about the music, it's about the entire experience. The machinery, the craftsmanship, the incredible engineering that went into these pieces.
Well, I can't wait to get into all of that with you today. I know there's so much to discuss about vinyl records and gramophones, and I'm sure our listeners will learn some interesting things. So Barry, take us back to the beginning. How did we actually get from those first phonographs to what we know as record players today?
The whole journey is fascinating. It all started with Thomas Edison's phonograph in 1877. And amazingly, the first recordings weren't even on flat discs, they were actually on cylindrical tubes covered in tinfoil. In 1880, Alexander Graham Bell, the original telephone man, changed the cylindrical tubes from tinfoil to wax, which proved more durable.
So, nothing like what we think of as records today?
Not even close. The flat disc format we know today, that came from Emil Berliner's gramophone in the 1890s. And what's really interesting, those first flat discs were made of shellac, a natural resin that's incredibly brittle, but created this amazing sound quality.
And the actual development of different speeds, how did that come about?
Well, the first standardized speed was actually 78 RPM, and that wasn't exactly standardized at first. Different companies were using different speeds, anywhere from 60 to 130 RPM. You imagine the chaos, but 78 became the standard, because it was simply the speed of the motor that was commonly available at the time.
So what changed? Why don't we use 78s anymore?
The real game changer came after World War II. Columbia Records introduced the 3313 RPM microgroove LP in 1948, and this was revolutionary because it could hold so much more music. And RCA Victor wasn't going to be left behind, so they came out with the 45 RPM format the very next year. The materials changed too. Vinyl plastic replaced shellac because it was more durable and honestly just produced better sound quality.
And that evolution in materials, it really made a difference.
The shift from shellac to vinyl was just transformative. Vinyl could handle much finer grooves, which meant better sound quality, longer playing times, and records that wouldn't shatter if you accidentally dropped them. And that basic vinyl technology, it's pretty much the same stuff we're still using today.
So, let's talk about the 33s. They really changed everything. What made them so special?
Well, the 3313 RPM format was almost revolutionary, so to speak. If you think about it, before this, you could only get about 3 to 4 minutes of music on each side of a 78. But with a 33, you're looking at 20, sometimes 23 minutes per side.
That's such a huge difference.
And that's not even the half of it. The slower speed, it actually created this incredibly warm, rich sound that people just fell in love with. You see, when you're playing at 3313, the needle's spending more time in each groove, picking up these tiny, tiny details in the music.
And is that why people say vinyl just sounds different?
Exactly. The 33 format literally changed how artists approached making music. Instead of just putting together a collection of singles, they started thinking about albums as complete works of art. Side A flows into side B, creating this whole journey. And the sound quality, it's just perfect for really immersing yourself in the music.
Tell me more about that sound quality.
Well, the thing about 33s, they've got these micro grooves, which are much finer than what you'd find on a 78. And because of the slower speed, you're getting this incredibly detailed sound reproduction. The bass frequencies are just so rich and full, and the high end has this natural warmth that, well, in my opinion, digital can't quite capture.
So why exactly did 33 become the standard for albums?
Well, first off, the playing time was ideal for classical music, which needed those longer sides. Then you've got the superior sound quality and the fact that vinyl was so much more resilient than shellac. And interestingly, 3313 speed was actually chosen because it worked perfectly with the existing motor technology of the time. They could use the same motors they were already using for 78s and gear them down by half.
And they're still going strong today.
Definitely. And you know what's incredible? The basic technology hasn't changed much since the 1950s. Of course, we've got better materials and improved manufacturing processes, but that fundamental design was so perfect that it stood the test of time. And the sound quality, well, there's something about that analog warmth that keeps bringing people back to vinyl.
So, tell me about 45s. We've talked about the 33s, but what made the 45s so special?
Okay, the 45, now that's interesting too. You see, RCA Victor introduced these in 1949, and they were perfect for singles. They were smaller, more portable, and they had better sound quality than 78s because they were made of vinyl instead of shellac.
And they spun faster than the 33s, right?
Exactly. And that faster speed, it actually gave them an incredibly crisp sound quality. The thing about 45s is, they were specifically designed for popular music. 7 inches of pure magic. And because they spun faster, they could handle the higher frequencies better, which made them perfect for those punchy rock and roll records of the 1950s and 60s.
What made them so popular with the music industry?
The 45 was the perfect format for jukeboxes. They were small, they were strong, and they were incredibly easy to handle. And because they only held one song per side, it helped create what we now call the singles market. You know, teenagers could afford to buy their favorite song without having to purchase an entire album.
That must have really changed things.
Completely, the 45 literally shaped popular music culture. If you think about it, the whole idea of the hit single, the top 40 format on radio, the entire concept of pop music marketing, it all really exploded with the 45. And the B-side culture was something special too. Artists would often use the B-side to experiment with different sounds or styles, knowing that most people were buying the record for the A-side hit.
Did they sound different from 33s?
They actually did. The faster speed meant you got this really bright, punchy sound that just worked perfectly for rock and roll, pop, and soul music. And because they were smaller, the groove had to be more tightly packed, which created a distinctive sound that became part of the whole experience. Some audiophiles actually prefer 45s for certain types of music because of that characteristic sound.
And people still collect them today?
Yes, the 45 market is just incredible. Some rare 45s can sell for thousands of dollars, and there's a whole culture of collectors who focus specifically on 45s. And you know what's amazing? They're still being produced today, mainly for jukeboxes and collectors. The format refuses to die, and there's something quite special about that.
So, going back to Shellac Records, I've been curious about 78s and the early gramophones. Can you tell us more?
Of course, this is where it all started. The Shellac 78s were, and I mean this quite literally, the foundation of the entire recording industry. These records were made from a mixture of mineral powders, cotton fibers, and shellac resin, which, believe it or not, comes from bug secretions.
What, bugs? You mean actual insects?
Exactly. It's this amazing natural resin that comes from the female lac bug, and that's what gave these records their unique properties. The thing is, though, the 78s were incredibly brittle. One drop and they'd shatter into pieces. But the sound quality, when they were in good condition and played on the right equipment, it was incredible.
And these were played on gramophones, right?
Yes, and let me tell you, gramophones can be absolute works of art. We're talking about beautiful brass horns, intricate spring-wound motors, and amazing wooden cabinets. The technology was completely mechanical, so no electricity was needed. The sound traveled up through that horn through pure physics.
So how exactly did they work?
Well, the needle would sit in the groove of the record, and as it moved along, it would vibrate. These vibrations would travel up through what we call the diaphragm, and the horn would amplify these vibrations naturally. It's like acoustic engineering in its purest form.
And are people still collecting these today?
Yes! The collecting scene is huge! You've got people specializing in specific eras, specific artists, even specific pressing plants. And the values, some of these early recordings can fetch astronomical prices. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars for the right piece.
What makes them so valuable?
Well, that's what's interesting. It's a combination of factors. First, you've got the historical significance. These recordings, they're recording voices and performances from over 100 years ago. Then there's the rarity factor. So many of these records were lost, broken, or thrown away over the years, and some recordings were only pressed in very limited quantities to begin with.
What should people look out for if they're interested in collecting?
The key thing with 78s is condition. It's absolutely everything. You want to look for records that have been properly stored, minimal surface noise, and absolutely no cracks. And with gramophones, Originality is crucial. You want all the original parts, the original finish, and most importantly, that gorgeous horn, if it has one, needs to be damage-free. The thing is, these pieces aren't just collectibles, they're actual pieces of music history.
Okay, I've been noticing something quite interesting lately. I'm seeing vinyl records are making a huge comeback. Even major retailers are selling turntables now.
Oh, you're definitely onto something there. The vinyl revival is remarkable. And you know something quite fascinating? It's not just the older generation getting back into vinyl. We're seeing teenagers, young professionals, people who literally grew up in the digital age are all embracing this analog format.
What is it about vinyl that's drawing all these new collectors in?
Well, there's this whole experience factor, right? When you put on a vinyl record, you're not just pressing play on your phone, you're actually engaging with the music in this really physical, tangible way. You've got to carefully remove the record from its sleeve, place it on the turntable, and gently lower that tone arm. It's almost like a ritual.
I imagine the sound quality has a lot to do with that too. I keep hearing people talk about that.
That's certainly part of it. Vinyl has a warmth, a depth that digital formats can't quite replicate. It's not technically more accurate than digital, but there's something about those tiny imperfections, that subtle surface noise. It just makes everything feel more alive, more present.
And what about the artwork? I've noticed album covers are getting elaborate again.
Of course, the artwork is a massive part of the appeal. We're talking about gorgeous gatefolds, colored vinyl pressings, special editions. Artists are embracing the format as a complete package of visual and audio art. And the size of it, that 12-inch canvas, gives you something you can appreciate and hold in your hands.
So what's driving this whole resurgence from the industry side?
Record companies have realized there's this huge market of people who want something more tangible, more collectible than just digital files. They're pressing everything now, new releases, special reissues, limited editions, and the pressing plants can't keep up with demand. Some artists are having to wait months to get their albums pressed.
Are people actually listening to these records, or is it more about collecting?
It's really both. And that's what makes this revival so fascinating. You've got serious audiophiles who are investing thousands in high-end turntables and speaker systems, and then you've got casual collectors who just love the ritual of it all. The thing is, vinyl has become this perfect blend of nostalgia and modern culture. It's managed to stay relevant while still maintaining that connection to its historical roots.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating, Barry. I mean, from those early gramophones all the way to modern vinyl, you've really opened my eyes to this whole world of analog audio.
Well, there's something so special about these physical formats, and that's what we're all about here on The Classic Connection, these incredible pieces of history that still have so much relevance today.
I think one thing that resonated with me is how much innovation went into developing these different formats, the progression from shellac to vinyl, and the different speeds.
What's amazing is that vinyl has managed to survive the digital revolution. It's not just surviving, it's absolutely thriving. And each format we discussed today, the 78s, 33s, 45s, they all played such an important role in shaping how we experience music.
So, for our listeners who might be thinking about getting into vinyl collecting, any final thoughts?
Start with what you enjoy, whether it's modern pressings or hunting down those vintage treasures. The joy of vinyl is in the journey, exploring, discovering, and most importantly, listening.
Thanks for tuning in to The Classic Connection, everyone. Join us next time when we'll be exploring another fascinating aspect of vintage culture and collectibles.
And remember, some things just get better with age. See you next time.